What's up? We got Legends of Tomorrow, Season 3, Episode 6, Helen Hunt. So, this episode starts off in the 1930s, where we see a blonde girl just walking through a studio, making everyone fall down. And then we see his director waiting for his star, but the guy says, your star is still, Lamar is still waiting up. And he's like, and then he says, who are we going to play are we going to get to play Helen of Troy? And then the real Helen of Troy shows up, and he says, then he falls in love with her and says, who's that? And she says, her name's Helen. And then he's like, okay, you'll be the Helen of Troy, because she's the real Helen of Troy, but he has no idea. Yeah, so meanwhile, quitting the actual actress's career. So meanwhile, on the Wave Rider, Nate and Sarah are talking, and Sarah's like, hey, we may have to do a Damien Dark now, but that doesn't mean that I want to kill him. And he's like, okay. He's like, Nate, have you taken a shower? And he's like, no. He's like, go take a shower before we go on the mission. He's like, okay, Captain. So then we see Martin and Jack playing with Ray, and they're like, they're like, hey, how we gonna, let's celebrate the Firestorm, let's split the Firestorm Matrix. How are we gonna do that? And he's like, as long as I see Martin to go back to his normal self. But then things start lighting up, and things explode, and then he's like, hey, Martin, and Martin's like, hello, Jack, hello, Ray, and Jack's his body. And then Jack says something in Martin's body. Yeah, this is a body switching episode, and it's really hilarious. So, he says, he's white, and then he says, Martin says his body's African American, and then Jackson Martin's body says, just say black gray. Because remember, he calls him Gray since season 2, episode 4 of The Flash. It's kind of their thing. But when Nate finds out, he cannot find this hilarious. And he's like, and then Jackson Martin's body is like, why don't we fuse? And then Martin and Jack's body is like, hey, that would be a terrible idea. We have no idea what would happen if we fused together. Turn the Firestorm with our bodies swapped. So then Zari and Maya come out, and they're like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, Martin and Jack swap bodies. And Zari's just like, okay. So like, now it's an anachronism hunting time. And they're like, and he's like, there's a thing in the 1930s about a blonde woman show up on set, causing the people to fight for her. And Ray, every time I move my legs, it just kicks the tripod. It's really weird. And then there was only one person that could have people fight over her, Helen of Troy. So like, hey guys, let's get this Helen of Troy back to where she came. I guess we're going to Hollywood. I love Sarah Sednoff. They're just so great. So they fly down, and they're like, wow, that is the real Helen of Troy. Not the real Helen of Troy, but the TV version of Helen of Troy. And so like, hey, we have to get to her before anyone else can. But then she goes, and then she gets into the car with the rival manager, and the manager she was fired at is like, get back here. Oh, he'll kill the manager if he has to, because she was like, wow. So they're like, wow, Helen of Troy, Helen does really have the power to so yeah, so they're like, hey, why don't we go to this Helen of Troy, to the thing that they're throwing, RGB picture is throwing for Helen. So they go there. Since Martin and Jax are swap bodies, they can't. Jax and Martin participate in this adventure because they're like, and Jax meets Martin and Jax's body meets Helen Lamar, his favorite crush, and he's like, hey, and then Mickey's like, hey, I could sleep with her, and he's like, come on, Mr. Rory, she is a very good person. She's a very good. Come on, Mr. Rory, she is a really good person who has invented a bunch of technology. And he's also, your shirt's tucked in. Your shirt's tucked in. So meanwhile, Sarah and Zari try to talk to Helen of Troy to get her to come back to Troy, but she's like, talk to Helen to get her to come back to Troy, but she's like, no, I'm not. She's not going back there where men kill themselves over her and a bunch of bad stuff happens. She's starting to learn 1930s languages. So then then she's like, well, if I've learned something, I shouldn't be questioned with a manager present. So then Damien Dark and Nora Dark show up, and she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I can't support Helen of Troy. And she's like, oh, you're Helen's agent. And he's like, yeah. Can we talk, Sarah? And he's like, talk about what? Talk about you quitting you quit the anachronisms. If you quit the anachronisms, leave Helen alone, and go back to where you came from, I will not think about killing you and your friends. But if you do stay, you'll deal with the wrath of Damien Dark, and I'll kill all your friends, and I'll only leave you alive to realize the fact that you could have saved them all. So yeah, but please kill. Yeah. So she's like, yeah. So she's like, Damien Dark is Helen's agent, and he pulled her aside to and then Jackson Martin's body is like, actually Martin's body is like, hey, if Damien Dark was there, why aren't you dead? And he's like, because he didn't want to kill us. He wanted to talk to us about giving up this whole anachronism deal. Yeah, he's like, why does Dark care about anachronisms? And she's like, we didn't have a chance to talk about his evil agenda. So, yeah, so meanwhile, they're like, hey, we have to figure out how this whole why the comms are down. And they're like, why is Gabe down? And he's like, because of Hedy Lamarr. Because Helen of Troy got her job at acting, she's now working at the Warner Brothers Studios taking phone calls. And without her in society, no technology will happen. So like, we have to convince Hedy Lamarr to leave Warner Bros. Studios and make the inventions that would eventually make the Wave Rider, make the technologies that would create the Wave Rider. So yeah, but he's like, Martin Jax's body is like, he's like, hey, Laura, you have to come with me. And she's like, why? And she's like, because you're gonna make great inventions one day. And she's like, how do you know that? Because so yeah. And also, there's a whole thing about how Martin and Jax's body said that Clarissa gave him like the go ahead to like gave him a hall pass. He chose Hedy Lamarr, and he's never think he'll meet her, because I'm guessing because he was like, she's dead. And he's like, is she dead? And she's like, well, she's not dead yet. So at that point in time, so they're deciding to go. And so, but then Dark and Nora show up and are like, hey. And he's like, you Damien Dark. And he's like, speaking from a source, did something happen to you? And she's like, they switched by. Damien Dark finds this hilarious. And she's like, are you done? And he's like, yeah. So she's like, what do you mean by your other half? Are you married? And he's like, me and Jax are technically married. And she's like, are you gay? And he's like, no, I am, but they're not. He's like, he tells her that he's one half of a superhero called Firestorm. So that's when Sarah, with showing off her new suit, because Sarah got a new suit off screen, fights Damien Dark. Sarah changes suits more often than a lot of people change hairstyles. Because one moment she's in one suit, and the next she's in another. Like they just keep changing her suit. So she fights Damien Dark, but then he's like, hey, no magic. I'll use no magic. Let's just fight. And she's like, that's the same thing Oliver Queen said before he killed you. Good Arrow season 4 reference. So he's like, I don't need magic to defeat you. And she's like, that's the same thing Oliver Queen said before he killed you. And they get into a fight. But then she's like, and then Nora uses her magic. She's like, I thought no magic. He's like, I said no magic, but that didn't mean his daughter didn't have to use it. And he's like, this is the infamous White Canary. And he's about to kill Sarah. And he's like, after seeing a dad go through a death, after seeing a child see their dad die, they probably don't want to see it again. So he's not gonna let Sarah. So then back with Hey Lamar. Hey Lamar's like, Martin Jax, why don't you fuse together? Then you'll be able to return to your own body. So they do that, and it's Martin's head in the Firestorm suit with Jax talking. So and he's like, you can do it, Gray, so they blast her. But so they defuse, and now Jax and Martin are back to their own bodies. Okay. Meanwhile, back on the Wave Rider, Zari's telling Helen of Troy about all the good things Sarah has done, but that's when Kawasa attacks, and it's like, hey, how could you just, she's like, hey, Kawasa, because Maya had a scene earlier that I didn't mention. She's like, hey, Kawasa, why didn't you have us, how could you disrespect the totems of Zambezi? And she's like, use it for evil. And she's like, well, the thing is that she passed it, Kawasa's sister passed it down to her, and then she passed it down to Mari, and then she was supposed to pass it down, her sister was supposed to pass down Kawasa, but instead passed down to Mari, who then passed down to Amaya. So that means, yes, everyone, Kawasa is Amaya's granddaughter, like we didn't already know. So, but then Helen of Troy takes her out, bludgeons her a bit, and she just turns into water and escapes. So, yeah, that's not Hannah Quas. We'll probably see her again, but yeah, that's the end of her for now. So, wait. Yeah, don't know what. At the musical button. There. So they say to you, yeah. So Sarah's unconscious, but Zari says take Helen. So she says, Helen, time to go back to Troy. But she's like, I'm not going back. She's not going back to Troy after seeing everything that she's been. So Zari's like, instead of taking her to Troy, she's gonna take her to Wonder Woman's home world in Themyscira. Same year of when Helen of Troy was from, but different place. And that's kind of where the episode ends. that's so actually it doesn't in there actually. So what happens is that's Nate. So Ray and Amaya talk. Ray, the annoying character, and Amaya, the cool character, talk about how Maya would how how Ray kept the granddaughter secret from her, and she's like, I know why you did it, Ray, because you didn't want to mess up the timeline. And she's like, I would have done the same thing. So yeah. So then we see Zari. So as I said before, Zari takes Helen of Troy to Themyscira, where Wonder Woman is from. So that means that Helen of Troy meet Wonder Woman. I know it's a Wonder Woman reference, but does Helen of Troy meet Wonder Woman? But anyway, that was a pretty good episode. I thought it was really good. It was really funny seeing Jackson Stein act seeing how each other acts in different bodies, and yeah, they're able to convince Hedy Lamarr to go to get an acting job and create technology that she creates. So yeah, that was a really good episode. Anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time for Legends of Tomorrow. Bam!